Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fat Muscle Project podcast. It's question of the week time. Lisa, as always, you've got the best stuff put together here. I don't know who sent this question into you, but this is harder than people realize. This is a good one. Go ahead.
Our question is, what is your best advice for optimizing sleep quality? I make sure to get 8 hours of sleep opportunity, but my Aura says I don't get a lot of restorative sleep, and that correlates with how I feel when I wake up. I take magnesium and ashwagandha before going to bed, and I've tried GABA, which didn't do anything for me. Any other tips?
Oof, that's a tough one because ashwagandha really helps. It lowers cortisol, which, if somebody has really high cortisol, as we've talked about before, you secrete blood sugar, and your cortisol should be a little higher in the morning because that's what wakes you up. It's called the dawn phenomenon. When we see cortisol's, starts to rise in the morning, that means your blood sugar starts to get pumped out and it starts to wake you up. Sometimes that's happening at night, especially for people that have a long history of drinking a lot of caffeine, like me. And that's why I've cut mine way back. So here's the things I start to dig into if they're already using ashwagandha. GABA is a great supplement. We've got that in one of the sleep aids that we carry called Relax Liposomal. GABA's nice. Like it helps you calm down and like wind down. And if you're using sleep aids, but you're still not getting that deep sleep and you're measuring it with the Oura ring, it means that typically what I've seen historically been the number one thing is people have caffeine in their system or some kind of stimulant in their system and they don't realize. So, like if they're going to bed at 10, but they had caffeine at like 4 o'clock, that can still impact even though you've been drinking caffeine for a long time, it takes a long time to get caffeine completely out. So, if you think about it, you're trying to sleep, you still have a little bit of caffeine in you, and it's like, hey, trying to stimulate your nervous system, which does simulate cortisol just a little bit, but it's not letting you get deeply into sleep. So outside of taking like Benadryl and just like really knocking yourself out, which you'll feel like shit the next morning. Normally it's caffeine is what I start with. And I'm like, hey, when's your last dose of caffeine? And finally, the other thing too, I know you're real big on routines and you're the expert in that. I'm the type of person I have to shut work down. I've got to do everything to keep my mind from wanting to spin because that's the way I am as an entrepreneur. I will think of like a new shirt idea, or I'll think of or I'll go run out there, or I'll write it down, or I'll email it to myself. And I'm on my phone late at night sometimes, like even just watching YouTube, like, and it's good stuff, like self-improvement stuff, but that light is shining in your eyes and it's simulating the morning time, right? And it's simulating, hey, like wake up. So what I do just personally real quick is I read and that puts me to sleep. But I read on my phone and I switch the screen to a black background, kind of a brown type tint. So it's not bright white, and I do that, and it typically puts me to sleep pretty well. But those are the two things I generally try to drill down on.
Yeah, I was exactly going to go down that routine or having a sleep
Yeah.
routine and just to like initiate or tell your body that system of like, okay, now it's time to switch off. We can't just expect our minds to like, even if you fall asleep pretty quickly and then that person is saying they have poor sleep quality, their mind like subconsciously keeps going. So I know you, like reading even on your phone or Kindle with a dimmed light should work, but generally speaking, sometimes I have people that say like, oh, I put on blue light blockers, or I have like a light dimming app, whatever, so it doesn't matter if I scroll. Well, any kind of scrolling like on Instagram or whatever, it's still going to keep your mind active because you're searching, you're looking. So absolutely, that would be a big no for me. At least 30, ideally 60 minutes before bed, kind of like stopping that. Ideally 2 hours or so before bed, stopping to work if possible. But just generally like having some kind of routine so that your body knows like, okay, when you start dimming that light 3 hours before you go to bed, we're initiating that process. But I would also add on to the basics that you were saying in the sense of supplements or caffeine and so on. Some people don't take like the timing of their meals or hydration into consideration, because if you drink too much too close before to bed and then you keep waking up because of that, of course that's going
Good
to
point.
impede your sleep quality also. Of course, alcohol, most people are a little bit more aware of that, but we often feel like it helps us drift off, but then the quality again is not the same. So really being mindful of that, or not having something that's really, really hard to digest close to bed either. So, your huge fiber bowl with quite a lot of healthy fats, even if
Yeah.
they're healthy fats, not going to be ideal. Of course, the size of the meal, the larger the further away you probably want it to be, but at the same time, you don't want it you don't want to be too hungry going to bed either. So it is a very, very fine line there. And I guess the only other thing that I have heard in terms of potentially helping with sleep is like L-theanine. I personally, I mean, that's essentially like chamomile extract, isn't it? I personally have tried it and I had the most vivid, horrible dreams. So I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's a very individual thing. And I know if people are sleepwalkers, they should not be taking L-theanine either. But that could be something, I guess, to tweak. But often it comes down more to some of those basics, as we were saying, like light exposure, I guess meal timing, caffeine timing, meal size, and of hydration, I think is a real big one too. I have even heard recommendations as in like 5 hours before bedtime, or more, tapering it down. So really having most of your hydration earlier on in the day, and
Mhm.
then the last 5 hours, if you go to bed at 10, that means from like 5 p.m. hardly anything, maybe like, a sip or so after dinner, or whatever, that's fine. But other than that, that would be my main recommendation.
You brought up a really good point, which made me remember two more things. So, one, we'll talk about food. Having a large meal, also the metabolic effect of food raises your body temperature. So, to get into very good sleep, you actually want your body temperature and the temperature in the room to start dropping. So, two things in relation to that. Like you said, don't have a giant meal before, especially, we all want to take slow digesting protein when you go to bed. Like if you eat like a bunch of meat, that the thermic effect of that, like your body is going to be hot. Or if you just eat a large meal in general, so carbohydrates especially will cause that if it's a large amount. However, a friend of mine, Cliff Wilson, is one of our coaches, and I've seen some other people start to talk about this. If you save some carbs to eat some carbs before bed, just a normal size meal, maybe like 30 grams of carbs, it can help stimulate serotonin. It can help
Definitely.
you sleep a little bit better. And by the way, the whole carbs before bed thing is going to store as fat. That's a complete myth. Your metabolic rate is I've seen studies where it's shown it to be faster the last half of sleep than it is during the day. So don't worry about that. Like you're going to burn through whatever fuel you put in your body when you sleep. Don't worry, even though you're just laying there. And most people are like, well, I'm just laying there. How am I burning calories? The processes in your body burn a lot of calories. So maybe you try 30 grams of carbs before bed and just see how you feel with that. But the other thing too is, if you're sleeping with a whole bunch of clothes on and you're like, you should really, really think about the temperature of the room. And I like to sleep with it like 68, 69 degrees. That's not super cold, but it's not hot. If it's hot, you're going to wake up. So just remember, as your body temperature starts to cool and the room cools, that's going to help you drop into sleep.
Awesome.
I don't have anything else to add. I think we pretty much covered it.
I think so too.
Yeah, if you guys ever have questions that you want featured here, guests, anything, just check out the show notes. If you ever want to send us a message, we are on here to help. So we hope you guys are crushing 2024. For myself and Lisa, we're out here. See you guys.
Bye.